I am Sebastian, 59 years old, a construction worker all my life. Nothing prepared me for the pain of standing outside my daughter's wedding venue, hearing her say, "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Go away." I quietly left my heart shattered into a million pieces. What could make a daughter reject her father, who sacrificed everything? And what happened when I made one phone call 2 hours later? Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button and stay till the end. For the moment, everything changed. The year was 1984 when I first met Amanda. She had the most beautiful smile that could light up any room. We were young in love and ready to take on the world together. After dating for 2 years, I proposed to her on a beach at sunset. It wasn't fancy, just honest and true like our love. She said yes without hesitation, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We got married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, but it was perfect for us. Amanda looked absolutely stunning in her simple white dress. I remember how my hands trembled as I placed the ring on her finger, promising to love and cherish her for all of my days. Our early years of marriage were filled with laughter, dreams, and hard work. I worked construction jobs, sometimes taking double shifts to save for our future. Amanda worked as a kindergarten teacher, bringing home stories about her students that would make us laugh until our sides hurt. We weren't rich by any means, but we were happy in our modest 2-bedroom home. 3 years into our marriage, Amanda told me she was pregnant. I still remember dropping to my knees, placing my ear against her still flat stomach, and whispering promises to our unborn child. 9 months later, Jessica came into our world screaming with healthy lungs and a full head of dark hair. The moment the nurse placed her in my arms, I made a silent vow to protect her and give her the best life possible. The days of Jessica's childhood are memories I treasure most. I taught her to ride a bike in our driveway, running alongside her as she wobbled and eventually found her balance. I still have the scar on my knee from when I dove to catch her during one of her falls. Every scrape and bruise she got, I felt it as if it were my own. Every morning I would drive Jessica to school before heading to my construction site. Even when I was bone-tired from working overtime, I never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. I remember sitting in those tiny chairs meant for children, my knees practically touching my chin, just to hear how well Jessica was doing in school. Weekends were special for us. We would go camping by the lake, and I would teach Jessica how to fish. She wasn't particularly good at it, always too impatient to wait for the fish to bite, but her excitement when she finally caught one was worth every minute of waiting. At night, we would roast marshmallows over the campfire, and I would tell her stories about the stars above us. Amanda was the perfect mother. She had a way of knowing exactly what Jessica needed, whether it was a hug, a stern talk, or space to figure things out on her own. Together, we made sure Jessica knew she was loved unconditionally. As Jessica grew older, I started putting aside money for her college fund. It wasn't easy with construction work being seasonal and sometimes unpredictable, but I was determined to give her opportunities I never had. I skipped lunches, worked holidays, and took on the most difficult jobs that paid extra just to add a little more to her college fund each month. Jessica was a bright student, always bringing home straight A's. When she won the science fair in 6th grade, I built a special shelf in her room just to display her trophy. Amanda and I would sit at the dinner table helping her with homework, watching her mind grow sharper with each passing year. Our family had traditions that bound us together. Sunday dinners were sacred, a time when we would all sit down together, no matter how busy our week had been. Birthdays were celebrated with homemade cakes that Amanda would spend hours decorating. Thanksgiving always involved my special turkey recipe that took 3 days to prepare but was worth every minute when I saw Jessica's eyes light up as I brought it to the table. Every night before bed, I would tuck Jessica in and tell her, "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." And she would smile sleepily and reply, "I love you, Dad." Those simple words carried me through the toughest days on the job. Jessica had her rebellious moments as a teenager, of course. There were slammed doors and heated arguments about curfews and boys. But underneath it all was a strong foundation of love and respect. Even in her angriest moments, she knew we had her back. And every storm would pass, leaving our family bond intact, maybe even stronger. Those years raising Jessica alongside Amanda were the happiest of my life. Our house was modest, our vacations simple, but we were rich in the ways that truly mattered. I never imagined how quickly it could all change. Life has a cruel way of shattering happiness when you least expect it. For us, it began with a routine doctor's appointment. Amanda had been feeling unusually tired with occasional pain in her left breast that she had attributed to stress or hormonal changes. She went in expecting reassurance. Instead, she received a diagnosis that would alter the course of our lives forever: stage 4 breast cancer. The day she told me, I felt the world stop spinning. We sat on our back porch, swing the same one where we had spent countless evenings watching the sunset. Her voice was steady as she explained what the doctors had said, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Jessica was 17, then preparing for her senior year of high school and college applications. Amanda made me promise we would tell her together. Telling Jessica was the hardest thing we had ever done. She sat between us on the couch, looking from my face to her mother's, trying to understand the weight of the words being spoken. When reality finally sank in, she collapsed into Amanda's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I wrapped my arms around both of them, trying to be the strength they needed, while feeling completely helpless inside. The months that followed were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and sleepless nights. Amanda fought with every ounce of her being. I took time off work to drive her to treatments, hold her hair back when she was sick, and administer her medications when she was too weak to do it herself. Jessica tried to maintain a normal routine at school, but the shadow of her mother's illness followed her everywhere. Despite the aggressive treatments, the cancer continued to spread. 5 months after diagnosis, the doctors told us to prepare for the inevitable. Amanda decided to stop the treatments that were only prolonging her suffering without offering hope for recovery. She wanted to spend her remaining time at home surrounded by the love and memories we had built together. Those final weeks were precious and agonizing. Amanda made videos for Jessica to watch on future birthdays and her wedding day. She wrote letters that I was to give to our daughter at specific milestones in her life. We reminisced about our life together, laughing and crying as we flipped through old photo albums. Amanda made me promise to take care of Jessica and to make sure she knew how deeply her mother had loved her. On a quiet Tuesday morning with Jessica and me holding her hands, Amanda took her last breath. She looked peaceful, almost as if she were just sleeping, but the silence in the room was deafening. Jessica's scream of anguish is a sound that still haunts my dreams. I held her as she collapsed, her body shaking with grief that was too big for her young heart to contain. The funeral was a haze. I stood stoically shaking hands and accepting condolences from friends and family. Jessica clung to my side, her eyes vacant, her responses automatic. We were both going through the motions, unable to fully process the reality that Amanda was gone. The days after the funeral were when the real struggle began. I had to learn to be both mother and father to a grieving teenager while processing my own overwhelming loss. Simple tasks became mountains to climb. I burned dinners, shrank laundry, and struggled to understand the complexities of feminine hygiene products when shopping for Jessica. But I tried my best, determined to keep my promise to Amanda. Jessica's grief manifested as anger, and I became the target. She would scream at me, asking why I couldn't save her mother, why I didn't make the doctors try harder, why I seemed to be moving on with daily routines when her mother was gone forever. Each accusation was a knife to my heart, but I understood her pain and tried not to take it personally. "You're not her," she would shout when I attempted to comfort her the way Amanda would have. "Stop trying to be mom. You can't replace her." And she was right. I couldn't replace Amanda, and my clumsy attempts to fill the void she left only seemed to highlight her absence more starkly. Meanwhile, the medical bills kept coming. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses were staggering. I took on extra shifts, working myself to exhaustion to keep up with the payments while still trying to maintain Jessica's college fund. There were nights I would come home after a 14-hour day to find Jessica locked in her room, dinner, untouched, homework incomplete. The distance between us grew wider with each passing day. The easy conversations we once had were replaced by one-word answers and awkward silences. Jessica started spending more time with friends, coming home later, and later, sometimes smelling of alcohol or cigarettes. When I confronted her, she would throw Amanda's absence in my face, knowing it was the one thing that could silence me. "Mom would understand," she would shout. "Mom wouldn't treat me like a child." And I would retreat, uncertain of how to parent, without my partner, afraid of pushing Jessica further away by being too strict. The night of Jessica's high school graduation, I sat alone in the audience, holding a bouquet of flowers and fighting back tears. When her name was called, I stood and cheered louder than anyone, hoping she would look my way and see how proud I was. She didn't. Instead, she ran straight to her friends after the ceremony, leaving me standing awkwardly with the flowers until I finally set them on a table and went home alone. That summer before college was tense. Jessica worked at a local cafe and spent most of her time out of the house. I tried to create opportunities for us to connect, suggesting father-daughter dinners or movie nights, but she always had other plans. On the rare occasions she was home, she was usually on her phone or laptop, the door to her room firmly closed. The day I drove Jessica to college was bittersweet. I had imagined this day differently, with Amanda beside me, both of us, helping our daughter set up her dorm room, taking her shopping for supplies, having a tearful but hopeful goodbye dinner. Instead, Jessica was eager to drop her things and send me on my way. The hug she gave me before I left was brief and formal, nothing like the embraces we once shared. "I'll call you," she promised, but we both knew it was an empty statement. The drive home was the loneliest of my life. The house echoed with silence when I returned. I walked into Jessica's empty room and sat on her bed, finally allowing myself to weep for all that had been lost: my beloved wife, my relationship with my daughter, and the family we once were. In the months that followed, communication with Jessica became sparse. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received delayed one-word responses. The weekly check-ins I had hoped for turned into monthly brief conversations, where Jessica always seemed to be in a hurry to end the call. I sent care packages that she rarely acknowledged receiving. I marked holidays alone, sending cards and gifts that went unacknowledged. At night, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering where I had gone wrong. Could I have handled Amanda's death differently? Should I have forced Jessica to go to grief counseling? Was I too lenient or too strict? The questions circled in my mind without answers, and the empty space beside me in bed served as a constant reminder that the person who would have known what to do was gone forever. Jessica was halfway through her sophomore year at university when she first mentioned Derek. It was during one of our rare phone conversations, a casual reference that caught my attention. "I've been spending time with someone. His name is Derek Thompson. He's pre-law. I seized on this small opening, hungry for any details about my daughter's life. That sounds nice, Jess. How did you two meet? In my economics class. His father is William Thompson of Thompson and Associates law firm. They have offices in 3 states. The way she emphasized his family's status didn't escape my notice, but I was just happy she was sharing anything with me. Would you like to bring him home sometime? I could make my famous lasagna. There was a pause on the line. His family has a lake house where they spend holidays. I might go there instead. The unspoken rejection stung, but I pushed past it. Over the next few months, Derek's name appeared more frequently in our limited conversations. Jessica mentioned weekend trips to New York City, fancy restaurants, and Broadway shows, all courtesy of Derek's generous allowance from his parents. I noticed changes in her voice, the way she spoke, adopting phrases and opinions that seemed borrowed from someone else. I continued to send money for her expenses, often stretching my budget to the breaking point, to make sure she had everything she needed. Construction work had become harder on my aging body, but I pushed through the pain, taking on the most physically demanding jobs that paid better, because younger men avoided them. When Jessica's birthday came around, I saved for months to buy her a delicate gold necklace with a small diamond pendant. I drove 4 hours to surprise her at college, only to discover she had gone to the Hamptons with Derek and his family for the weekend. I left the gift with her roommate and drove back home, the weight of disappointment heavier than any load I had ever carried on a construction site. It was almost a year into her relationship with Derek when I finally met him. Jessica reluctantly agreed to bring him to dinner when they were passing through town on their way to his family's ski lodge. I spent all day cleaning the house, preparing a meal that would impress, and nervously changing my clothes multiple times before they arrived. Derek pulled up in a sleek black BMW, helping Jessica out with a practiced gallantry that seemed performative rather than genuine. He was tall and conventionally handsome, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His handshake was firm but brief, his gaze already moving past me to assess my modest home. "So this is where Jessica grew up," he said, his tone making it sound more like a question than a statement. "Quaint." Throughout dinner, Derek dominated the conversation, talking about his family's connections, his plans for law school, and the European vacation they were planning for the summer. When I mentioned my current construction project, rebuilding a historical theater downtown, his interest was perfunctory at best. "Manual labor must be so grounding," he commented in a tone that made it clear he considered it beneath him. Jessica, who once had proudly shown her friends the homes I had helped build, now sat silently, her eyes downcast, as if embarrassed. When Derek excused himself to take a phone call, I tried to connect with her. "He seems ambitious," I offered, trying to find something positive to say. "His family has connections everywhere," Jessica replied, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite identify. "Giselle, his mother, sits on the boards of 3 charities. They're very well respected." When Derek returned, Jessica seemed to transform before my eyes, laughing too loudly at his jokes, touching his arm repeatedly, adopting mannerisms that were entirely unlike the daughter I had raised. It was as if she was playing a part in a performance I hadn't been given the script for. As they prepared to leave much earlier than I had hoped, Derek mentioned casually, "We should have you over to meet my parents sometime. They're usually in the country club on Sundays for brunch." His tone made it clear this was an empty courtesy, not a genuine invitation. Jessica hugged me goodbye, a quick, impersonal embrace that felt like a formality rather than affection. The meeting with Derek's parents happened by chance rather than by invitation. I ran into Jessica, Derek, William, and Giselle at a restaurant where I was meeting a client to discuss a renovation job. It was an upscale place where I felt out of place in my button-up shirt and khakis among the sea of designer outfits. Jessica's face registered shock and something like panic when she saw me. She made introductions with visible discomfort. William gave me a once-over that felt like an appraisal of an inferior product, while Giselle's smile was glacial as she extended her manicured hand. "Sebastian, Jessica has mentioned you, of course," Giselle said in a tone that suggested Jessica had said very little. "Construction, is it?" William asked. "Interesting choice. My father always said there's dignity in all forms of work." The condescension was thinly veiled. The conversation was mercifully brief, with Derek suggesting they needed to get to their table. As they walked away, I overheard Giselle asking Jessica, "Darling, did you ever consider hyphenating your last name? Thompson has such a nice ring to it, and, well..." She glanced back at me, not bothering to lower her voice. "Some names just carry more weight in certain circles." That night, I accidentally discovered how much Jessica had distanced herself from me and her upbringing. A mutual friend sent me a link to a social media post where Jessica was interviewed for the university paper about her involvement in a charity gala organized by Derek's mother. "I've always been passionate about giving back," Jessica was quoted saying. "My background in Connecticut prepared me for understanding the importance of social responsibility." Connecticut. Not our small town in Pennsylvania where she had actually grown up. She had rewritten her own history to fit into Derek's world. The final blow came when I called Jessica on what would have been Amanda's birthday, hoping to share memories and perhaps feel connected to my daughter through our shared love for her mother. Jessica answered distractedly, the sounds of laughter and music in the background. "Dad, can I call you back? We're at the yacht club for a regatta." "It's Mom's birthday," I said quietly. There was a pause, then, "Oh, right. Look, Derek's calling me. His father is introducing us to a state senator. I'll call you later, okay?" She never did. 6 months later, I received a text message from Jessica. "Derek proposed last night." I said yes. No phone call, no details, no invitation to celebrate. Just a sterile announcement that my only child was getting married. I responded with congratulations and a request to meet to talk about their plans, to offer any help I could. The reply came hours later. "We're pretty busy with planning. We'll be in touch with details." I sat in my empty kitchen, staring at my phone, feeling like a stranger in my daughter's life. The news about Jessica's wedding came to me through Tom, an old family friend whose daughter had stayed in touch with Jessica through college. He called me on a rainy Tuesday evening, his voice hesitant. "Seb, I don't know if you've heard, but Melissa got an invitation to Jessica's wedding. It's set for June 15th at the Lakeside Manor Resort. Pretty fancy place." My heart sank. It was already April, and I had received no invitation, no call, not even a text about the date. I thanked Tom for letting me know, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. That night I called Jessica, rehearsing what I would say, trying to find words that wouldn't sound accusatory or desperate. When she finally answered, her voice was distant, distracted. "Dad, hi. I'm actually heading into a meeting with the wedding planner." "I heard about the date," I said carefully. "June 15th sounds lovely." There was a pause. "Oh, yes. We just finalized everything." "I haven't received an invitation." I said the words painful to speak aloud. "We're still working out some details," she said vaguely. "The venue has space limitations, and Derek's parents have a lot of important contacts they need to include." The implication was clear, but I pressed on. "I was hoping we could talk about my role in the wedding. Traditionally, the father of the bride walks his daughter down the aisle." Another pause, longer this time. "We haven't really decided on all the ceremony details yet. I'll let you know." After we hung up, I sat in my silent house surrounded by photos of Jessica growing up, of our family, when it was whole. I made a decision that night that would later prove to be both the most painful and most necessary of my life. I withdrew nearly all of my savings money I had set aside for retirement, for potential medical emergencies, for the uncertain future that loomed ahead of me as I aged. I decided to use it to buy Jessica and Derek a wedding gift, a down payment on a small but charming starter home not far from where Derek would be attending law school. It was a substantial sum representing decades of overtime of bag lunches, instead of restaurant meals of patching clothes instead of buying new ones. But Jessica was my only child, my last connection to Amanda, and I wanted to give her something meaningful, something that showed the depth of my love despite the distance between us. While making these financial arrangements, I discovered that the venue Jessica had chosen, Lakeside Manor Resort, required a 50% deposit to secure the date. On an impulse, I contacted them directly. "I'm the father of the bride, Jessica Miller," I explained to the event coordinator. "I'd like to pay the deposit for my daughter's wedding." The coordinator sounded surprised. "Oh, well, that's very generous. The deposit has been an issue. We've been waiting for it to be finalized." A strange feeling came over me. "Has no one made any payment yet?" "No, sir. We've been holding the date temporarily, but we needed to receive the deposit by the end of this week, or we'd have to release the date to another client." Without hesitation, I gave them my credit card information, paying not just the deposit, but the entire venue fee in full. The coordinator was effusive in her gratitude, promising to make everything perfect for the special day. Over the next few weeks, I received several more calls from various wedding vendors: the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the DJ. Each time the story was the same. They had been contracted, but not paid, and deadlines for deposits were approaching. Each time I paid in full, requesting only that my contributions remain anonymous. I wanted Jessica to have her perfect day without feeling obligated to me. As the wedding date approached, I found myself lying awake at night, rehearsing a speech I wasn't sure I would be invited to give. I bought a new suit, had my hair trimmed, even practiced my dance moves for a father-daughter dance that might never happen. Hope is a stubborn thing, persisting even when all evidence points to its futility. I scoured Jessica's social media for glimpses into the wedding preparations. What I found broke my heart. There were photos of her trying on wedding dresses with Giselle captioned, "So grateful for my future mother-in-law's impeccable taste." There were pictures of her at a cake tasting with Derek and his parents, at meetings with florists, at venue visits. All moments I should have been part of, all experiences stolen from me. The most painful discovery was a post from one of Jessica's bridesmaids. "So touching to see Jessica practicing her walk down the aisle with her future father-in-law, William, will be stepping in for this special moment." The picture showed Jessica radiant in a simple white slip dress, her arm linked with William's. Both of them smiling broadly as they walked through what appeared to be the venue's garden. I had been replaced. The right to walk my only daughter down the aisle to give her hand in marriage had been given to a man who had known her for a fraction of the time I had, who had not bandaged her scraped knees or checked under her bed for monsters who had not held her through the devastating loss of her mother. The night before the wedding, I sent Jessica a text. "I would like to attend your wedding tomorrow. Please let me know the time and if there's anything I can bring." Her response came hours later. "Ceremony is at 4 p.m., reception to follow." No mention of my role, no invitation to the rehearsal dinner that I knew from social media posts was happening that very moment. Just cold, impersonal information, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than her father. I laid out my suit for the next day, polished my shoes to a high shine, and tried to prepare myself emotionally for whatever might come. I placed the deed to the house and a letter expressing my love and hopes for her future, in a beautifully wrapped box to bring as my gift. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I dreamed of Amanda. She was sitting on the edge of our bed looking just as she had before the illness took her from us. "Remember your worth," she said in my dream. "Remember who you are." I woke with tears on my cheeks, but a strange sense of calm in my heart. The day of Jessica's wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day that seemed to mock the storm of emotions inside me. I dressed carefully in my new charcoal gray suit, the most expensive piece of clothing I had ever purchased. I trimmed my mustache, dabbed on the cologne Amanda had always liked, and practiced smiling in the mirror until it almost looked natural. The drive to Lakeside Manor Resort took 45 minutes, though it felt like hours. I arrived early, parking my 10-year-old Ford pickup truck between sleek luxury vehicles that made mine look woefully out of place. I sat in the cab for a few minutes, gathering my courage, the beautifully wrapped gift box on the seat beside me. The venue was truly spectacular. Flowering gardens surrounded a grand stone building, with a view of the lake shimmering in the distance. White chairs were arranged in neat rows on the manicured lawn, with an elaborate floral arch marking where the ceremony would take place. Staff bustled about making final adjustments to decorations and place settings. I approached the entrance, gift in hand, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. A young woman with a tablet stopped me before I could enter. "Welcome to the Thompson-Miller wedding. May I see your invitation, please?" My heart sank. "I'm Sebastian Miller, Jessica's father." She frowned slightly, checking her tablet. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but I don't see your name on our guest list." "There must be a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm the father of the bride." The young woman looked uncomfortable. "Let me check with the coordinator." She stepped away, speaking quietly into her headset. I stood there, acutely aware of curious glances from early arriving guests, feeling like an intruder at my own daughter's wedding. After what seemed like an eternity, the young woman returned with an older, more professionally dressed woman who introduced herself as the event coordinator. "Mr. Miller, there seems to be a bit of confusion. Your name isn't on any of our lists, not the ceremony, not the reception, not even the family photos." I felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. "There has to be a mistake. I'm Jessica's father." "Let me speak directly with the bride." She offered, her expression sympathetic. "Please wait here." I stood in the entryway, clutching my gift, watching as more guests arrived, all well-dressed, all bearing the unmistakable aura of wealth and privilege that had become so important to Jessica. Some gave me curious glances, others seemed to recognize me and whispered to their companions. The humiliation burned like acid in my chest. Then I saw her. Jessica appeared in a doorway across the lobby, wearing a silk robe, her hair partially done. Her expression, a mixture of shock and something that looked distressingly like annoyance. She hurried over, keeping her voice low. "Dad, what are you doing here so early? The ceremony isn't for hours." "I wanted to see you before," I said simply. "To give you my gift, to tell you how proud I am." Her eyes darted around, checking if anyone was watching. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. The coordinator says I'm not on any lists." I said the words painful to speak. Jessica's cheeks flushed. "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? It's nothing personal," she rushed to explain, though how it could be anything but personal escaped me. "It's just that Derek's family has a certain image to maintain. All their friends are here, important business connections. It would be uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable," I repeated numbly. "You wouldn't fit in." She continued, each word a knife to my heart. "You don't understand this world, Dad. And the way you dress, the way you talk about your construction jobs, it's just not appropriate for this setting. I looked at my daughter, this stranger in a silk robe with half-done hair and perfectly manicured nails, and wondered how we had come to this moment. Behind her, I saw Derek and his parents appear, their expressions a mixture of concern and disdain. William placed a protective hand on Jessica's shoulder. "Is there a problem here?" Before Jessica could answer, Giselle spoke, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by nearby guests. "Jessica, darling, you need to get back to hair and makeup. We can handle this situation." Jessica looked at me, then at them, and I saw her make her choice. "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Go away. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stood perfectly still, absorbing the full impact of her rejection. I was dimly aware of whispering guests, of the pitying look from the event coordinator, of William's hand firmly guiding Jessica back toward the preparation area. "I understand," I finally said, though I didn't, not really. "I'll go." I set the wrapped gift box on a nearby table, turned, and walked slowly toward the exit, my back straight, my head high, despite the crushing weight of humiliation and grief. I refused to let them see me break. In my truck, with the door firmly closed, I finally allowed myself to feel the full force of Jessica's rejection. Tears came hot and bitter streaming down my face as I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I pulled out my wallet and looked at the worn photograph I kept there, Amanda holding baby Jessica, both of them smiling at the camera. What would Amanda think of the woman our daughter had become? The pain gradually gave way to something else, a cold, clear anger unlike anything I had ever experienced. In that moment, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and called the bank. "This is Sebastian Miller. I need to cancel several payments immediately." The customer service representative sounded concerned. "Mr. Miller, these are substantial transactions. Are you sure you want to cancel them all?" "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "And I want to initiate chargebacks on any payments that have already processed. May I ask why this could affect your credit rating?" "The services will not be rendered as agreed," I said formally. "I was under the impression these expenses were for an event I would be part of. That is no longer the case." After hanging up, I made several more calls to the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band, the cake baker, and every other vendor I had paid. In each case, I explained that I was withdrawing my financial support and canceling the services I had arranged. "But the wedding is today," the florist exclaimed in horror. "The arrangements have already been delivered." "Then I suggest you retrieve them," I said calmly, "or bill the Thompson family directly." By the time I finished the last call, a strange sense of peace had settled over me. I wasn't acting out of spite, though the hurt was still raw. This was about dignity, about consequences, about teaching a lesson I had apparently failed to impart during Jessica's upbringing. I drove to a nearby coffee shop, ordered a cup of black coffee, and waited. I knew it wouldn't take long for the chaos to unfold, and I was right. Within 30 minutes, my phone began to ring. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately, and again, and again. After the 5th call, I finally answered. "Hello, Jessica." "Dad, what did you do?" Her voice was shrill with panic. "The venue manager just pulled me aside and said all the payments have been canceled. The caterer is packing up the food. The florist is threatening to take back the arrangements." "That's correct," I said calmly. "How could you do this?" she cried. "You've ruined everything." "I didn't realize you knew I had paid for your wedding," I replied. "Since I wasn't invited, I assumed someone else was covering the expenses." "What are you talking about?" Her voice rose higher. Derek's parents said they would contribute, but they haven't actually paid for anything yet. They were waiting for some investment to come through. So that was it. The Thompsons, for all their talk of wealth and connections, had been counting on someone else to foot the bill for their son's extravagant wedding. And Jessica had been caught in the middle, perhaps too embarrassed to admit to her future in-laws that she needed her working-class father's money after all. "I'm curious, Jessica," I said, keeping my voice even. "If I was good enough to pay for your wedding, why wasn't I good enough to attend it?" The silence on the other end told me all I needed to know. "Dad, please," she finally whispered. "There are 200 guests here. Derek's family's friends, business associates, even a state senator. We can't cancel now. It would be humiliating." "Yes," I agreed. "Humiliation is a terrible feeling, isn't it? Standing alone, rejected by the person you love most in the world, being told you don't belong." I heard muffled voices in the background, then Derek's angry tone. "Let me talk to him." "Mr. Miller," Derek said, not bothering with pleasantries, "this is completely inappropriate. You can't just pull financial support without warning." "I believe I just did. Do you have any idea who is here today? The connections, the relationships that could be damaged by this tantrum." "I'm sure a man of your family's means can handle the expenses," I replied. "Unless, of course, your family's wealth isn't quite what you've portrayed it to be." More muffled conversation, then William's authoritative voice. "Miller, this is William Thompson. Whatever issue you have with Jessica, this is not the way to handle it. I'm prepared to involve my lawyers if necessary." "Feel free," I said. "I have documentation for every payment I made, and I made them with the understanding that I would be part of my only daughter's wedding. Since that's not the case, I'm under no obligation to finance an event I'm explicitly not welcome to attend." I could hear the commotion in the background, growing louder, vendors demanding payment, guests wondering about the delay, Jessica crying. Part of me ached at causing my daughter pain, but a stronger part knew this was a necessary lesson, perhaps the last paternal guidance I would ever be able to offer her. "Dad." Jessica was back on the phone, her voice broken. "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. You can come to the wedding. You can walk me down the aisle. Anything you want." "That's not how it works, Jessica," I said gently. "You can't suddenly want me in your life because you need something from me. That's not love, that's not family, that's not what your mother and I taught you." "So you're just going to ruin my wedding to teach me a lesson?" she cried. "No, Jessica. The wedding was already ruined the moment you decided your father wasn't good enough to be part of it. I'm just no longer willing to pay for my own heartbreak." I ended the call, turned off my phone, and sat quietly finishing my coffee. The barista gave me a curious look, perhaps noticing the mix of sadness and resolution on my face. "Everything okay, sir?" she asked kindly. "No," I answered honestly. "But I think maybe it will be eventually." I drove home slowly, my emotions a complex tangle of grief, relief, anger, and a strange sense of liberation. I had spent so many years trying to fill the void. Amanda left, trying to maintain a connection with a daughter who seemed determined to erase me from her life. Today, I had finally accepted that I couldn't force Jessica to love me or to honor the values we had raised her with. She would have to find her own way, make her own mistakes, and perhaps someday find her way back to the truth of who she was and where she came from. At home, I changed out of my suit and sat on the back porch swing, Amanda's favorite spot. I could almost feel her presence beside me as the sun began to set. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" I asked the empty space beside me. The gentle evening breeze seemed to whisper her answer. "You stood up for yourself, for us, for what we believed in." From what I learned later, the wedding descended into chaos. The Thompsons, despite their proclaimed wealth, either couldn't or wouldn't cover the suddenly due expenses. Vendors began packing up. Guests witnessed the heated arguments between Jessica and Derek's family, heard accusations of deception and social climbing. The carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time. The state senator and his wife quietly left. Business associates exchanged knowing looks. The perfect society wedding became the perfect society scandal. And somewhere in the midst of it all, my daughter had to face the consequences of valuing appearance over substance status, over sincerity and connection over love. It gave me no pleasure to imagine her humiliation, but I hoped that someday she would understand that the lesson, painful as it was necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is allow their child to face the natural consequences of their choices. In the days following the wedding disaster, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. Moments of vindication alternated with crushing guilt. Had I gone too far, was there a gentler way I could have taught Jessica the same lesson? I replayed the events countless times in my mind, questioning my actions, my motives, even my worth as a father. Jessica called repeatedly in those first few days. I let her messages accumulate in my voicemail, unable to bear hearing the hurt and anger in her voice. The messages evolved from furious accusations, "You deliberately humiliated me," to tearful pleas, "Please call me back, Dad," to resigned acceptance. I guess we have nothing left to say to each other. Each one twisted the knife deeper, but I wasn't ready to speak with her yet. Derek's father left a single threatening message about potential legal action, but nothing came of it. I suspect their family attorney advised them that my actions, while perhaps morally questionable, were legally defensible. I had paid for services under the reasonable expectation of being included in the event. When that expectation was violated, I was within my rights to withdraw financial support. A week after the wedding, I made a decision to get away for a while. I had accumulated vacation time at work, and my boss, who knew something of my situation, encouraged me to take it. "You look like hell, Seb," he said bluntly. "Go clear your head." I packed a small bag, got in my truck, and started driving with no particular destination in mind. I ended up at a small coastal town in Maine, where I rented a modest cabin near the water. The solitude was both painful and healing. Each morning I walked along the shore, watching the sunrise, feeling the vastness of the ocean, put my problems into perspective. One evening, sitting on the cabin's porch with a cup of coffee, I struck up a conversation with a man about my age staying in the neighboring cabin. His name was Frank, and he was there for similar reasons, seeking peace after family turmoil. My son chose his stepfather to be his best man. Frank told me, his weathered face showing the same hurt I carried. 28 years I raised him, coached his teams, helped with homework, taught him to drive. But 5 years with his mother's new husband, and suddenly I'm an afterthought. We talked for hours that night, two fathers sharing stories of love and loss, pride and disappointment. Frank wasn't the last such friend I would make. Once I opened up about my experience, it seemed fathers with similar wounds appeared everywhere, at the local diner, on fishing boats, at the small town bar. We formed an informal support group of sorts, men learning to navigate the complex emotions of parental rejection. Through these conversations, I began to gain clarity. I hadn't failed as a father by expecting basic respect and consideration from my daughter. I hadn't been wrong to stand up for my dignity. The pain Jessica experienced was the natural consequence of her choices, not my vindictiveness. I extended my stay in Maine to 2 weeks, then 3. I called my boss and arranged to take a full month off, something I had never done in my entire working life. The time away gave me perspective. I thought about Amanda, often wondering what advice she would give, how she would have handled the situation. One night in a dream so vivid it felt real, Amanda came to me. We were sitting on our old porch swing, her hand in mine. "Jessica is still our daughter," she said softly. "She lost her way, but that doesn't mean she's lost forever." I woke with tears on my face, but a newfound resolve in my heart. I needed to find a way forward that honored my own worth while leaving the door open for reconciliation, if Jessica ever chose to walk through it. When I finally returned home after a month away, my house felt different. It had been a shrine to the past, filled with memories and regrets. Now I saw it with fresh eyes, as a space that could still hold a future. I began making changes, small at first, rearranging furniture, painting walls, creating a workshop in the garage, where I could pursue the woodworking projects I had always enjoyed, but never had time for. I started reconnecting with old friends, accepting dinner invitations I would have declined before even joining a community theater group as a set builder. Life began to take on new dimensions beyond the narrow focus of my relationship with Jessica. 2 months after the wedding incident, I received a letter in the mail. The envelope bore Jessica's handwriting, but the return address was unfamiliar, not Derek's apartment where she had been living. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. "Dear Dad, I don't know if you'll read this or throw it away, and I wouldn't blame you if you chose the latter. What I did to you was unforgivable. There's no excuse for treating you the way I did, for being ashamed of you, for rejecting you, when all you've ever done is love and support me. The wedding didn't happen. After you canceled the payments and everything fell apart, Derek and his parents showed their true colors. They blamed me entirely, said I had misrepresented my financial situation, that I had trapped Derek into a relationship under false pretenses. We tried to salvage things for a few weeks, but the damage was done. Derek ended our relationship, and his parents made it clear I wasn't welcome in their social circle anymore. I've moved to a small apartment in Portland and found a job teaching at an elementary school. It's not the glamorous life I thought I wanted, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. I've been doing a lot of thinking about Mom, about the values you both taught me, about who I became after she died. I ran away from the pain by reinventing myself, by trying to be someone else entirely. I was so desperate to belong somewhere that I was willing to erase everything and everyone who made me who I am. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't even expect a response to this letter. I just wanted you to know that the lesson wasn't wasted. It was brutal and humiliating, yes, but also necessary. You showed me what true dignity looks like, what it means to value yourself even when others don't. If you ever want to talk, my number is below. If not, I understand. Love always. Jessica. I read the letter 3 times, emotions washing over me in waves. Pain at her suffering, vindication that the lesson had been received, hope at the mention of love, and the possibility of contact. I didn't call immediately. I needed time to process, to decide what a healthy relationship with Jessica might look like moving forward. A week later, I drove to Portland. Jessica's apartment was in a modest building on a tree-lined street, nothing like the luxury high-rise she had shared with Derek. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her eyes filled with tears. She looked both older and younger, somehow more like the daughter I remembered from before Amanda's death. "Dad," she whispered, then threw her arms around me. We didn't solve everything that day. One conversation couldn't heal years of hurt on both sides, but it was a beginning. We talked for hours, really talked with the honesty neither of us had been capable of before. Jessica spoke of her grief over losing Amanda, her fear of losing me too, her desperate attempt to find security by attaching herself to Derek's seemingly perfect family. "I thought if I became like them, I'd never have to feel that kind of loss again," she admitted. Their world seemed so untouchable, so permanent. "Nothing is permanent," I said gently. That's why authentic connections matter so much. They're all we really have. Before I left, I gave Jessica a small wooden box I had made in my new workshop. Inside were the letters Amanda had written for her before she died. Letters I had been saving for the right moments in Jessica's life. One was specifically labeled, "When You Lose Your Way." She knew me so well. Jessica said, tears streaming down her face as she held the letters. She knew I would mess up, that I would need her guidance even after she was gone. "Your mother was the wisest person I ever knew." I agreed. "And she loved you more than anything in this world. So do I." That visit was the first of many. Our relationship rebuilt slowly, one honest conversation at a time. Jessica stayed in Portland, committed to her teaching career and to living a more authentic life. She apologized to old friends she had abandoned, reconnected with family members she had distanced herself from, and gradually found her footing as the person she was meant to be, not the person she had tried to become. As for me, I continued my construction work, but cut back my hours to make time for my woodworking and community theater involvement. I made new friends and strengthened old relationships. I learned to find joy in the present, rather than dwelling in the past or worrying about the future. A year after the wedding that never happened, Jessica and I held a small ceremony in our backyard, just the two of us and a few close friends. We planted a cherry tree in Amanda's memory, taking turns adding soil around its roots while sharing our favorite memories of her. "Mom would be proud of us," Jessica said, as we stood back to admire the young tree. "Not because we're perfect, but because we found our way back to each other, back to what matters." She always said, "Love is a choice you make every day," I replied, putting my arm around my daughter's shoulders. "Sometimes it's an easy choice, sometimes it's the hardest thing in the world, but it's always worth it." As the sun set on that simple ceremony, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before Amanda's illness. Life had taken us on a painful journey, but we had emerged stronger, wiser, more appreciative of the authentic connections that sustain us through difficult times. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages. Sometimes true dignity means walking away from situations that diminish your worth. And sometimes the road back to what matters requires getting completely lost first. Jessica has since built a fulfilling life on her own terms. She's excelling in her teaching career, has made genuine friends who value her for who she is, not what she can offer them, and has even started dating someone who reminds me a bit of myself at that age, hardworking, sincere, and kind. As for me, I've learned that being a good parent sometimes means allowing your child to experience the natural consequences of their actions, even when it breaks your heart to do so. I've learned that self-respect is not selfishness, that maintaining your dignity is not the same as holding a grudge. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to rewrite your story, to choose a different path, to prioritize what truly matters. The young cherry tree in our backyard has grown stronger with each passing season. So have we. If you're facing a similar crossroads in your relationships, remember that true love sometimes requires difficult choices, and that your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to maintain your dignity? How did it change your relationships? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, we're all walking this complicated path together, and sharing our stories is how we help each other find the way. Thank you for listening, and until next time, choose dignity, choose authenticity, and choose love even when it's the hardest thing to do.